just tell you, he done more for my campaign than anybody. And that's Almighty God. When I talk about God in this campaign, I've never prayed to win this campaign. I've only prayed that God's will be done. Because I think you can sometimes win on your own, and it's not a good thing. And sometimes you can lose, and it's the best thing. But the best thing we can do is put it in the hands of Almighty. And as Saran was saying, there's nothing too great for God. For one day every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. The Lord said, crying, he said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all the goodness thereof is the flower of the field. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, because the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. You know, we're put here on earth for a short time. And for that short time, our duty is to serve Almighty God and to acknowledge Him in all things. I've just been I've talked to the governor who's congratulated me, Governor Ivey. I've talked to Mr. Strange, who has recognized that I've won and that he would work with me. I've talked to Senator Lee, Senator Paul, Rand Paul, and Senator and various others that are important in our government. Together we can make America great. We can support the president. Don't let anybody in the press think that because he's supporting my opponent that I do not support him. I support him. As long as it advances our society, our culture, our country, I will be supported. As long as it's constitutional. But we have to return the knowledge of God and the Constitution of the United States to the United States Congress. I believe we can make America great, but we must make America good, and you cannot make America good without acknowledging the sovereign source of that goodness, the sovereign source of our law, liberty, and government, which is Almighty God. We have become a nation that has distanced ourselves from the very foundations. Washington said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion, and morality are indispensable for us. We've got to recognize that we've been separated by something that separates the church and state doesn't stand for. It doesn't separate us from God. Nothing can separate us from God. We are one nation under God, and we can become one nation unified. There's so much division in our society. Protests, demonstrations, mobs, racial strife. But we're all created in the image of God. I recall what Harry Truman said in his inaugural address. The American people stand firm in the faith which has inspired this nation from the beginning. We believe that all people are created in the image of God, and from that faith we will not be moved. We've been moved, but we can move back. God can still bring us back. You know, the Constitution has been my life. I was sworn many, many years ago to the United States Constitution on the banks of the Hudson River as a cadet at the United States Military Academy. I fought in the war to defend that Constitution. I fought in the courts against liberal judges that have usurped their authority of that Constitution. And I'll fight for you at the United States Senate. I'll fight for the people of this state and of this nation who want to bring our country back to his greatness. And we can, and we will. And thank you very much. It's also time to rededicate our lives to God and to the Constitution and to our country, to our families. Let's go again and make America great. Thank you. May God
from WBRN Radio in Boston on the Boston Red Network. This is a special report, the Alabama primary runoff. Judge Roy Moore from the Washington Post crushed the candidate of the Republican establishment, old man Mitch McConnell, by roughly 10 points there. McConnell and his cronies, the Senate Leadership PAC, and various others spent $10 million to try to defeat Judge Moore. Judge Moore, a populist, a far-bred, etc. You just heard his victory speech there. He is heavy on religion, no doubt about it, and his words are the best description of what his campaign was about. But as for Mitch McConnell, it was a bad day for him. The Hopalong-Cassidy health care bill went down in defeat. He had put a lot of energy the last 2 weeks into it, and he was forced to pull the bill and sent out his cronies to explain to the people, Graham and Cassidy himself, what had happened there. As the Minority Leader, Mr. Schumer, eloquently said, the Hopalong-Cassidy healthcare bill was a bill that no one liked. And numerous other Republicans, including Grassley of Iowa and Orrin Hatch of Utah, Senator Hatch, said that this bill was a bill that should never have been before us. And they echoed the heroic Senator McCain of Arizona, when Senator McCain made very, very clear that the Senate should return to what is known as regular order. That was also echoed today by Senator Murray of Washington State. So the Senate will have more order there. They'll go through the committee process as they should. There is a bipartisan bill before the Senate from Lamar Alexander and Senator Murray of Washington State. They will work on their particular bill and see how they can get it passed with the help of a majority of Democrats and some moderate Republicans. They can pass it in the Senate. And in the House, they'll need every moderate Republican they can get to assist them in the House to bring the bill out. In the meantime, McConnell has moved to what he calls tax reform, which will not be easy in itself. Now, as the Post points out, McConnell served as a minority leader for 8 years. But as minority leader, his position was to try to prevent legislation from President Obama. and tried to precipitate after President Obama's victory in 2008 to make him a one-term president. He lost at that. President Obama was reelected in spite of legacies upon the economic legacies from the Depression, literally. So McConnell used to ask the question, where is Allison Lundgren Grimes? Well, I imagine Allison Lundgren Grimes is sitting there with a glass of wine saying, what happened to Mitch? Well, Mitch is wondering about it too. Bob Corker came out and said he's from Tennessee. He would not run for re-election. So another hot contested race there. They wonder what is happening. And from David Perdue, he is from Georgia. There's a complete lack of congressional leadership and no accountability to get results. He said he was elected in 2014. A critic of senior GOP senators for abandoning the repeal effort. From the get-go, 3 GOP Senate chairmen failed to support our effort to repeal and replace, as according to him. The inner circle of McConnell did not even try to sugarcoat the failures, what they meant for the Republican, what they meant for Republicans heading into 2002 election. Moore's victory, according to the leader's advisors, is a direct result of congressional Republican failure to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Well, it's more involved there than that. He was appointed by Bentley, a crook that was on his way literally out the door before he was impeached. That in itself put this race in a situation that Big Luther, as he was known, Strangelove, was an illegitimate candidate. And on top of that, he was a lobbyist most of the time. He had been Attorney General, but that was in his later life there. And, of course, he was appointed in the seat of one Beauregard Sessions, another right-wing, rabid right-wing character that was so racist that he was denied a judgeship in the 80s. And none other than Coretta Scott King wrote a letter against him. This should be a wake-up call to every Republican, the deep dissatisfaction among the base with the pace of the Trump agenda. That's from Josh Holmes, McConnell's 2014 campaign manager and close advisor. Holmes said the entire party must now unify and deliver on their vows to overhaul the tax code so voters will see more money in their pockets. But the problem is the nation is this is an industrial capitalist country, and it's much more complicated than that. You have natural disasters in Harvey, and also in Florida. You had the hurricane there, and now you have the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. All these things cost money, and they cause problems with the economy. Less so in Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is off of the mainland. But still, there's billions of dollars done there. The Trump administration has not moved aggressively on Maria, period. And then, of course, the damage done in Florida, particularly to the Key West area, that will again cost billions of dollars to take care of it. Houston is dried out, but a lot of homes were destroyed there. Business productivity was lost there. And those things do impact the economy. And much of the hurricane type activity and the abnormal temperatures across the country, we've seen 90-degree temperatures in late September, is attributed to climate change. And this is part of the problem with the whole DJ Trump regime, denying climate science and science itself. They're on a collision course, there's no doubt about that. And then the problems on the Korean Peninsula could any day just spin completely out of control. And then the only question is if you have a conventional war or a nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula. And once as they say, the cannon fodder is in the sky, there is, in this type of war, there's no turning back. Not with this present administration, period. So those are some of the things that are there. Less the so-called tax reform and reduction of tax rates. Ordinary people will get a little bit of it, but not very much. It's to the 2% is for the rich and for the corporations, and people don't like it. And the idea of taking away their health care in the form of $1 trillion was not a good thing for McConnell and Company. So they now look to 2018 as not being a very good year. They can literally decide what they want to do, but again, the situation is not the best in the world. In the Post, let's take a quick look at this. The stunning defeat there, of course, from the Post starts this out. This is Robert Costa. The victory by conservative firebrand Judge Moore over Luther Strange marks another humiliation, and this is the whole thing. For McConnell, Moore's win, however, also demonstrates the real political limitations of DJ Trump, who endorsed Big Luther, and at the same time in that endorsement, he basically said he had doubts about Big Luther. People think about those things all the time up here, as from Senator Shelby, referring to the Orneys in the elected Republican ranks. A lot of them won't be run out of town. They want to stay and fight for their beliefs, but they know more supporters will come after them anyway. No doubt. But if you look at more supporters and what the Republican Party has stood for the last 20 years, not much out of line there. They have been a little bit retreating on the so-called moral issue. They still use abortion as a major plank on same-sex gay marriage. They've sort of gotten out of that business. But that's a business imperative right there. From Tim Ingram, a long-time Coke advisor, if you're an incumbent, you have to assure the wins is against you. If you do run and take nothing for granted and leave nothing on the table, you start out with a big strike against you. You're an incumbent Republican senator. For the Democrats, the prospect of further retirements, revere GOP infighting has sparked talk for competing for Senate seats previously out of play. It's particularly true with Roy Moore. Well, the problem there is that Roy Moore, do they have a candidate that could actually rally the people of Alabama? That's the question right there. As far as followers of O.J. Simpson, yes, there's no problem there. It would mean a very, very large turnout, the same prescription that Luther Strange, Big Luther, ran. Large turnouts in the urban areas, but they have to offset the rural areas. Acid tests, you have an acid test back to 2000. That's from Charles Skies, a former talk show host, referring to the year when seasoned GOP lost the Senate primaries across the country. It's almost if there is a compulsion in the party to nominate the most out there candidates just to show you can, with no concern about what it means for the rest of the party. Said Republicans, and that means Trump too, have unleashed something they can't control. There's no doubt about that. Steve Bannon is a product of DJ Trump. Now, when you talk about Steve Bannon, although Steve Bannon doesn't run religion as much, he's a secular man as much as Judge Moore, but it's basically the same thing. Hardline challenges there by Bannon and company will be out there, so the Republicans are in for a long day. People everywhere outraged with the swamp, but there has been hesitation in some states among people who are thinking about it. They wonder whether those senators can be beaten. This challenges all of that. That's from Danny Tartanian. He's the son of Coach Tartanian, a GOP businessman, against Dean Heller. he will no doubt defeat Dean Heller in Nevada. So this is all shaping up. I was with Bannon last night talking it through, and what happened in Alabama increases the likelihood that he'll jump in. That's from a state. Oh, yeah, we give to him. Chris McDaniel, if you remember him, he's the senator that challenged in the primary, Senator Cochran. Senator Cochran, of course, with the help of followers of O.J. Simpson, crossed over from who normally vote Democratic, crossed over and defeated McDaniel. He's considering challenging Roger Wicker before the polls close. The race has had repercussions across the country. Now this is Cochran here, McDaniel, who nearly toppled Fed Cochran in a messy 2014 primary. This is an incredibly exciting time. I admire President Trump, but people will reach their own conclusions. They're going to vote against those who play Washington games. That means they'll go against McConnell and Wacker. It's definitely not business as usual. Coker is retiring. Senators expect to run for re-election next year. Wacker, Heller, Flaky, Lion Ted Cruz, Debbie Fisher in Nebraska, Orrin Hatch out there, and John Bastros in Wyoming. Only three of them, Heller, Wacker, widely seen as vulnerable. Well, that's three down. Could be. There's no doubt about those three. Not we hadn't enough thought about Wacker. Veteran Republican poster here, David Winston, who worked closely with party leaders, said that given what Bannon has been doing, you see how other primaries could be of value to him and his network. No doubt about that. That is, but you have to remember, the Republican Party had to fall back on Mr. Bannon, and that is where they are. In Tennessee, a state senator who has been considering a Coker challenge was with Bannon, Alabama, the Mercer family. Bannon's a billionaire backers, that's old man Mercer, and his daughter. Asked about rumors that Mercer and other donors have pledged more than $1 million to McDonald, he replied, "It may be more." Well, they are getting ready for Mitch McConnell, Ward Baker, Karl, Rove, Steve Law, all instruments that have tried to destroy Judge Moore. And that was a mistake. For those of us in the attack ad business or comparative ad business, attacking Judge Moore and his family in Alabama was not a good idea. Attacking Judge Moore, yes, but not his wife. That was one of the problems there, period. And using a $10 million basis here, you think you have a pack of morons. They are, you think nothing but ruples. They have no interest at all in what you have to say, in what you have to think, or what you want to do. That's what Bannon said. Other people of Alabama. Well, that has worked. That's been a cookie-cutter scheme for Uncle Karl and company for a very long time. But Uncle Karl has not done a very good job of fighting with the Republicans. Bannon's decree. You see what happened in the primary. Uncle Karl said that the Republicans had the finest group of candidates ever. That was in the prior to the 2016 election, and DJ Trump just dropped him like one little domino after the other domino. Voting with Trump and donning a red cap emblem to make America great again, as Strange did with Trump last week, may not stave off challengers who style themselves as Republican rebels. No doubt about that, because Judge Moore used that brilliantly. And this is another problem also. Judge Moore had been talking about basically making America great again, the old-time religion, for a very long time in his career. and he had run statewide. This is one of the items that has not been brought up by these people. Whereas Luther Strange did run for Attorney General, but Attorney General in Alabama probably was not a very closely watched race. The people really didn't know who Luther Strange was. All they knew about him was the attack ads on Moore's wife and his family. A big mistake by these people. But they have tried that there's an adage in attack ads, you live and die by the attack ads. And the attack ads and their polling, it was kind of interesting. We were looking at the public polling, and the public, most of the public polling had Judge Moore ahead by 8 to 10 points, and even if we would have went into the margin of errors there, he was still always ahead, at least from our Ouija board, by 4 to 5 points. So it honestly doesn't matter. He was going to win this race anyway, and their polling, the whole idea of what would happen in some of the larger cities, we looked at that also. So, again, if you go into primaries in 2018, there are some problems there. The president went to Alabama because of loyalty and political necessity. That's from Stephen Rudy's at Newsmax. That's another Republican outfit. One of Trump's first choices would be how to get behind Moore. Well, he can easily get behind Moore. That's no problem right there. Just wear a cross on him there, and he's behind him. Senator Biden will campaign for Doug Jones in Alabama. Well, the thing there is in Alabama, it's such a red state, it's going to be hard, and the Democrats have to assess how much money they'll put in. Also, they don't have the structure. There is a Democratic Party in Alabama, but that's an African-American party. So there's going to be a rush to overanalyze Alabama. That's from Josh Holmes, former chief of staff for McConnell. Remember, old Josh Holmes, he got into some problems himself. McConnell showed he will go to war with the Republican senators come hell or high water. A lot of folks out there would have cut the bait when the election turned, but that's not who McConnell is. Well, it didn't really matter very much there. I didn't know Holmes had left him. Holmes was knew he was chief of staff, but he was his chief political operative there in Kentucky when he ran against Miss Lundgren Grimes. Anyway, I fully anticipate a whole lot of people who have nothing to do with the result taking credit for Alabama. No doubt about that. Bannon, Burt Barr Network, it leads to more friendly fire in the party. Well, the problem there is when you start talking about limiting people's health care, cutting taxes in America First, you're in for a long night, no doubt about it. Let's take one little quick look as we, as they say, pass on here, out of here. And let me see if we can look back at the actual totals here. I have to get from DJ Trump. Congratulations to Roy Moore on the Republican Party primary win in Alabama. Luther Strange started way back and ran a good race. Roy, and he accidentally, when he was on a talk show with Bubba and somebody there, he kept calling Roy Ray, so he didn't really even know who the hell he was. One of those kinds of situations that you sometimes fall into. Let me just look very quickly here. We had a county breakdown here. More rattles a GOP win over Big Luther is the headline in the Birmingham newspaper here, and basically says it all. Riding on his horse, and in he came. So that was pretty much the end of that situation there. Roy Moore being on his horse and riding with a white hat. Before he had a black hat. But anyway. Another one here. Luther Strange says his loss was not DJ Trump's fault. Well, again, that is one of those situations that you will no doubt see and hear about, and very little will be done about it. I'll go very quickly here to get the county rundown. I know in Birmingham and some of those counties, 97% of the precincts reporting in here. Roy Moore has 255,898 votes to Lupus Strangelove, 211,048. Lupus Strangelove has a 45.3%. Roy Moore has 54.7. So it's a 10 and 9 point victory. We won't quibble about it as to how it actually went along. And we don't have a precinct breakdown here. But if we go back, basically that was what the polls had to say. We'll look at the polls here quickly as we leave here. The Trafalgar people actually had Roy Moore up by 16. We thought that was a little out of it there, but nonetheless, Emerson College basically got it close. They had it at 10. You heard in the broadcast 10, and also did Gravis. Gravis had it at 8 points there, and the others at 10. So that was Optimus at 10. And Fox News Strategic Research Poll had it at 8. So the public polls were very, very close to actually how it went down. So we don't have to worry much about that. Let me just see if we can get from the Birmingham newspaper here, the race coming up between Judge Moore and Doug Jones. Conventional fake in Alabama is where a Democrat hasn't won statewide since 2008 and hasn't won the Senate seat since, 1992. There, observers note there could be an typical political beliefs for the next 2.5 months as national attention shifts to the race of the former U.S. Attorney in the late 90s. That's Jones, tantalizing prospect for taking the U.S. Attorney General Sessions' seat. But it would be an uphill battle. The most political observers believe that Jones remains a long shot, no doubt about that. He did prosecute the Klansman that blew up the 16th Street church there in Birmingham. I don't see a Democrat winning statewide, that is from Steve Flowers, a former Republican member of the Alabama legislature and an author. So it is a long ways out. Bert Buchanan, a Republican strategist in Birmingham. The election is not a toss-up. No one knows who Jones is, and that's a big problem right there. Democratic operatives are hopeful and point to a wave of good luck that has boosted Jones. I'm not sure what the good luck was. In every turn, dominoes have fallen there. Well, he'll have to have a lot of them to fall. That's from a poster. He says that there's been several examples of good political fortune and ugly expensive GOP primary, no doubt about that. But the problem is the people that supported Lupus Strangelove, would they vote for Jones? It's kind of doubtful because nothing tells me that there is a moderate trend in Alabama Republican politics, not for a very, very long time. Democrats elsewhere are becoming increasing believers that this will turn into a real race. I don't see that at this moment. Indeed, the Supreme Court race in 212 is likely to surface as a talking point in the battle that year. Moore barely defeated Bob Vanson, a circuit judge was late to the race in Birmingham. Well, yeah. Vincent election was on the same ballot as Mitt Romney defeated President Barack Obama, 60 to 38%. Doug Jones did not have the drag on top of the ticket to worry about. Well, no doubt about that. William Stewart, he's a professor emeritus of political science at the University of Alabama. He said the political climate is different today than in 2012, as more white conservatives in the Deep South have mobilized around President Trump and the American First. No doubt about that. Stewart said there is a lot of hot-button issues which resound with voters in Alabama and is beneficial for conservative politics. Trump doing the Huntsville speech on the NFL players kneeling during the national anthem. So many Democrats are making statements which rightly or wrongly a great majority of European Alabamans would disagree with. No doubt about that. So again, there's that situation there. Moore received in the August 15 primary 62,570 votes, and Jones actually got 104,000 votes there out of 154,000 cast by Democrats. So in other words, just looking at the totals here, we're looking at tonight's totals. What was it, 222,000 there? So, I mean, a long ways to go for a Democratic person to catch up. That particularly is reaching out to political heavyweights. Like, well, Biden, yes, but I'm not sure what Biden would be able to do. Trump will, of course, return, but how much Trump has to do with Judge Jones? Judge Jones basically is on Judge Jones. Judge Moore is basically on his own. He's definitely a political charlatan. That's from Jess Brown, a retired political science professor from Athens State College. He instantly worked for Roy Moore and will be a Moore guy. Now, not sure who he was talking about here. From the president. Well, yeah. Flowers said you can't predict what Trump's going to do. He's just totally unpredictable. Moore will embrace him, and he'll be forgiving him. Well, yeah. Well, not going to hurt Moore. The Huntsville speech there, he said that he'd return if Judge Moore won there. It would become a Democratic seat. People say that. But anyway, that is a very hard situation ahead. In Alabama, the Democrats would have to do a hellacious turnout to vote a situation for Jones. Now, there's a possibility. We haven't looked at it yet. We'll look at it more in terms of what is even the potential for a turnout there. Will Judge Moore get more turnout than he received? Well, when you start adding up the Moore and Luther Strangelove vote there, you don't even want to look at it. If Trump saw it because a Democrat become a Democratic seat, you'll have every Republican here, said Brown. We still have the only show in town. Trump will come back. Well, Trump, yeah, that's there's no problem with Trump coming back. And Karl, Rove and company will have to, as they say, turn their situation out because he's a populist. Moore is anti-LGBTQ, no doubt about that. Well, yeah. And he's got Jones out there, but it's a no issue for Jones. In other words, Jones can say very, very little about this. So we'll do it here at BRN Radio here in Boston. It's been a long night. We've had a number of programs going here today. We're about, as LBJ would say, to run out of gas. But we'll talk to you later. We came in with Judge Moore, and we'll leave now. Have a good day. This has been a special report on the Boston Red Network.